All right. Hi, everyone. As folks continue to join, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm Julia with Politics in Prose. We're live with Kate Baer and Chloe Yelena Miller discussing I Hope This Finds You Well, poems. You can follow the link in the chat to purchase the book directly from us at Politics in Prose. If you have a question this evening, please put that in the Q&A feature found at the bottom of the screen. We'll move to questions in the last portion of the discussion, though we apologize in advance if we run short on time to get to all of them. Additionally, we're glad to offer closed captioning for the event via Zoom's auto captioning service. To enable captions, click the CC live transcript icon at the bottom of the screen. And we do want to thank everyone out there for joining us. We're very grateful to our family of loyal customers who keep our business and our spirits afloat. It's my pleasure to introduce this great new collection. I Hope This Finds You Well is a book of poetry birthed in the darkness of the internet that offers light and hope. By cleverly building on the harsh negativity and hate women often receive and combining it with heartwarming messages of support, gratitude, and connection, Kate Baer offers us a lesson in empowerment, showing how we too can turn bitterness into beauty. Kate Baer is an author and poet based on the East Coast. Her first book, What Kind of Woman, was a #1 New York Times Instant Bestseller and featured in publications such as Harper's Bazaar, Vogue.com, the Chicago Review, and Entertainment Weekly. Her work has been published in Literary Hub, Cup of Joe, and the New York Times. Baer will be in conversation this evening with Chloe Yelena Miller, a writer and teacher living in Washington, D.C. Author of Viable and Unrest, Chloe was also recipient of a 2020 DC Arts and Humanities Fellowship Grant. She's worked for Toadlily Press, the Literary Review, Portal del Sol and Lumina, and has participated in the Bread Loaf Writers Conference, the Vermont Studio Center residency, and the A Room of Her Own Writers Retreat. On behalf of Politics in Prose, please join me in welcoming Kate Baer and Chloe Yelena Miller. Thank you both so much.
Hi, Chloe. Thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it so much. And it's so nice to meet you.
It's really nice to meet you too. This is great.
This is so great. I think we share a climate, right? Yesterday I was on a Zoom with a bookstore in Colorado and I was like, it's so cold, right? They were like, it's 75 here today. And I'm like, oh. Wow. So we're a bit chillier today, aren't we?
Yes.
In DC as well. I'm going to start tonight by reading a portion of I Hope This Finds You Well. For anyone who's unfamiliar, the left side of the page, if you happen to have it or buy it, is original text that I did not write, and then the poem following it is what I made out of those words. The original messages have been untouched, but the titles are mine. This one is called When Chad is a Dad. I think it's funny how much you hate men and then go ahead and have this husband like he doesn't apply. Not buying your book, but if I was, I would get it for my daughters to show them how not to be. Even though you'll never see this, it's worth sharing. Not all women think like you or believe men are inherently against women. They might even say they appreciate men. Can't fathom this? Maybe read a book outside your What Kind of Woman bubble. Sincerely, a man who believes his daughters can be both independent and polite. It's funny how men go ahead and have daughters, even though they can't fathom what daughters can be. This one's called Fat Girl Smiling in a Bathing Suit. Hi, Kate. My name is Beep, and I was wondering if I could ask you a series of questions for my podcast, Beep. Specifically, I would love to know how your husband feels about your poetry, if he sees any of it, and also about the photos. If my wife was posting photos of her body, I might want to know first. This would be a candid combo. My partner sometimes gives questions ahead of time, though, if you prefer. Thanks for the opportunity to chat. I know you're busy. Here's to a great end of the year. My husband sees my body and gives thanks for the opportunity to know her. This last piece is called My Daughter's Struggles. It's the final piece in the book. I like to read this one when I also read When Shad is a Dad. I think it pairs nicely. This is also from a dad. Hi, I found your profile recently when a friend posted one of your poems to her stories. I just loved the way that you're able to repurpose words from nasty messages you get from strangers. I don't police my teenage daughter's social media, but I know she gets messages similar to the ugly ones you receive. Apparently, all women do. I'm horrified at what harassment women must simply accept as the price to pay for existing online. That you're able to turn these ugly and hateful messages into something different, something uplifting, just really touches some unknowable thing inside me. It gives me hope. I'll never deal with my daughter's online struggles. I'll never know what she knows. But by sharing your page with her, I can hope she's able to see whatever horrible words come to her DMs as what they are, words. Words she can define herself, rearrange, and repurpose to take away their intent to harm. Thank you so much for giving this dad some much needed hope in these hopeless times. My daughter's price to pay touches some unknowable thing inside me. I'll never know what she knows, but I can hope she's able to see herself and repurpose harm in hopeless times.
Thank you so much. Those were really beautiful. And that's a great one to end that
Yeah.
first reading part with.
Yeah, thank you.
So we don't have any official questions yet, but Laura Kasai wrote, no question, just praise for what kind of woman. I keep it on my desk when I need to feel energy. Please keep writing.
Oh, thank you.
It's a great place to start. So kind of thinking about, I'm a writing teacher as well as a writer, and thinking about how this book came to be. And I've heard you talk about it in other places, but not here yet.
Yeah.
So could you talk a little bit about the origin of the book?
Sure. Yeah, I certainly didn't mean to write this book. When I finished What Kind of Woman and it was coming out, I did sign to do another full-length collection of poetry, which, if I can ever write it, comes out next fall. This was kind of slid in between these two books. I was approached to write it a few times and I kept saying no because it felt like it was going to be super depressing. But in general, yeah, the erasure poetry was totally a surprise. George Floyd had just been horrifically murdered, and I was kind of talking about police reform online, and I had a bunch of people push back about it, which is not a surprise at all. And normally with those messages, I just delete them. I don't find that there's any meaningful connection in those conversations in an inbox like that. I don't think that is a great way to communicate any points back and forth. But anyway, I was reading one from a woman who disagreed with me, and the words just kind of popped out at me or rearranged in a different form. And so just on a whim, I took a screenshot and I hid her identity and used the erasure tool to make a poem and posted them side by side. And the reaction was so strong. And I think it just goes to show that people are really at odds with other people on the internet, even more at odds with people they actually know. And yeah, it honestly, at first it was like a party trick. I didn't really see it going beyond that, but it did. And I am so happy this little baby book is out. It was difficult to write, if I'm being honest, but when it was finished, I was able to see it as a whole and appreciate it, especially after we decided to include those positive messages. Those really made it less of a bummer.
I was really interested in that. And I was surprised when I saw the first positive one because I expected them all to be negative. Yeah. I was wondering if there was a different process for you or different approach when the tone was really different, like the last one you just read.
Yeah, I at first I was like, isn't this vain? Because they're writing these nice things to me. And I'm like, I don't want to put these in a book. And my editor really pushed back against that and was like, no, I think otherwise it's just really a downer. And also to show that there are all sorts of different communications that you're having. Yeah, it was different. It was a different process too, in that I got their permission, especially because they were sharing their stories and often very personal things. And so all of those messages, I got their permission. So that was also different.
Oh, that's really nice. I love the idea of taking someone else's words, turning them, and then creating new art from that. And I'm curious, so in a poetry writing class I'm teaching, we talk a lot about the white space of a poem. So I'm not sure how many folks have the poems, but you can see from the erasure that there's the block of text from the original message and then the erasure. And I'm interested in how in erasure, the empty space, the white space is really different from a different kind of poem that uses the space to give some information. This is different information. And I was really interested to hear you read them to see how you use the white space. Could you add anything about some of the choices you were making or?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, there's not much of a choice because I can't change where the original words are. There were times when I had a choice where I had two different places I could use and those I would kind of space it out, whatever looked better. And also sometimes with the margins, I could change it a little bit so the words looked a little bit differently. I really, though, was only making it easier to read because sometimes they were kind of difficult to read. But yeah, when I was doing the audiobook, I was like, how are we going to do this? Am I going to like change my voice, drop down an octave or something, which I didn't, don't worry. But it was strange to read and I was worried it wouldn't translate, but I think it did. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it works really well. And I don't read it haltingly at all. Really, your eyes able to follow. They definitely are easy in that sense. So we do have some questions. Edward Wyatt wrote, there are a couple of references in your new book to Greg. I haven't read your first book, which is What Kind of Woman? Is Greg a reference to your other writings? Would you like to talk about Greg?
Greg is an arbitrary name I picked. No offense to any Gregs who are wonderful. I've met some nice Gregs. I feel like Chad is often a name we use, but I felt like we needed another name. And so I chose Greg. I'm sure there are nice Gregs. I don't actually happen to know any, but I know maybe one. I think there are probably plenty. No offense to any Gregs.
Carrie Crane wrote, hi, Kate, I've seen your selfies from the Panera Bread parking lot, and I'd love to hear more about your process. So I understand that you were writing in the parking lot during the pandemic. What does a typical writing day look and feel like?
Yeah, we moved about 6 months ago. And for the 10 years prior to that, I didn't have an office. I have a whole bunch of kids and we were living in 1,200 square feet. And so I did not have an office to write. So I would go to Panera because it was close, had free Wi-Fi, and it was comfortable. And I wrote there for a long time and became quite fond of it. I actually saw a bunch of beautiful things over the years, grandmas with their kids and just a lot of weird stuff, but it was kind of a great place to write. Now I have my own office, but yeah, that's funny. Thanks for enjoying that. I think I talk about Panera in every interview. I never would have thought I would talk about Panera so much. I don't personally eat their food anymore. Again, no offense to Panera. I can't quite stomach it. The smell too, a lot of smells are in there. Yeah, my typical writing day, I'm in my office with my headphones on so I can't hear anyone. Childcare, it's pretty unglamorous.
Childcare makes all the difference.
All the difference.
So someone who didn't share a name said, I love the idea that inspired this collection. Do either of you have other pieces or writing art media that takes source material and flip it on its head? So it sounds like this was a contained project compared with the other poetry and prose that you've written. Have you done this approach elsewhere?
No. Have you?
Not successfully.
Yeah.
I've definitely written in response to art, but not taken the art and then manipulated it like the erasure poem.
Same. It a little bit feels, I don't know. Because with this book, I felt fine with all the things that I took, but I don't know, to take someone else's like literary work. And I feel like that's like I'm doing something wrong, if that makes sense. Or like, I don't know, like getting a Sharpie and drawing on a statue. But I think people do that, right? I don't know. I'm not super familiar with erasure poetry as a whole. I know, is it Mary Ruffle? Is that how you say her last name? You're a poetry teacher.
I think so. Yeah.
I don't say it out loud very often. I think she has some erasure poetry that I've seen recently that's really beautiful, but I'm not a huge, like, I don't know very much about it. Do you, like, what's your, is it erasure poetry? Like, do you teach it?
Not specifically, but it kind of comes
It
in.
comes in.
I think in general, it's a nice response to create something, just like you did, a response to create something new from the original words that were already there. And then it's kind of it's a curious turn around from the original, but then it's in the author's voice. I mean, it's very much each piece that you wrote that is the erasure doesn't sound anything like the original, even though they're the exact same words, which is what I think is really interesting about it.
Yeah.
They're the poems that are written after a particular style or author, which are honoring them in a really different way.
Yeah.
And then, on that same note, I was wondering, as you were creating the collection, how much there was that didn't make it into the book. And kind of
99%.
Really, that much?
So much. If you think about it, most messages people send are very short or contain a lot of like inappropriate content, or the biggest problem was not enough nouns and verbs. Just logistically, I had to throw out most messages because they weren't long enough. And I remember when I was kind of in the thick of writing this, when people would send me a message, I was like, if you're going to be rude, please send more paragraphs. I need more to choose from. I had to throw so much out, which was maybe the worst part, because then I was consuming it, but then not even using it. So it was like a bummer to me and wasn't even helping me. So that was probably the worst part.
And the book happened quickly in a fairly contained period of time. So I'm not really on Instagram. So I wasn't following you there. How much had you been posting and then people were responding? Like, do you think they had it in their mind? Ooh, maybe I'll make it into one of these pieces.
Yeah. Luckily, I've had 10 years of content. You know, I've been writing online for 10 years in various forms, blogs, Huffington Post, various social media platforms, you know, promoting my work. And so I did have a whole bunch of places to pull from, and also years to pull from, although most of them did happen pretty recently for some reason in response to What Kind of Woman, which is maybe strange to some. I get it. At this point, I've stopped thinking about like obsessing over why this is happening as much, but yeah. So I forget what your question was, but yes, a lot of it did come from recently.
So there was a lot of kind of overlap from the past.
Yeah.
I think this leads well into Indira Martel writes, Kate, it seems your writing is a radical form of self-care. What seems remarkable to me is that your writing has also become a part of other people's self-care, especially in social media forums where your words are shared and communicated when the poster may be at a loss for words. Have you considered the transformative nature of your work in the lives of others?
That's a deep question. I don't dwell on that, although there have been times, just yesterday, when someone wrote to me and said, I just want to tell you that when you originally posted this piece a few months ago, how did she say it? How can I leave out some? She said she left her abusive husband, is what I'm trying to say. I don't want to give too many details of that, and that felt like such a heavy thing. And I was so grateful that she shared it with me and so proud of her. And so it's such a strange thing, because I'm not trying to be a self-help book. I don't feel like I have any position to be that for anybody else. But then when I hear those stories, I feel so honored, and I feel don't know, I feel so honored, and also this responsibility that sometimes I didn't quite mean to have. But I do love hearing those stories, and it is sometimes strange, but also has ended up having so many beautiful conversations because of it.
Great. I think it's a great response and way to think about being verbally attacked by strangers, or even just these extreme disagreements we're having, especially in this period of time. I usually try and go towards humor, but then that sometimes gets mean. But by only using their words, you're really constrained by the form.
Yeah.
So Shika Lamba wrote, what would be the one thing you want women to take away from the book in regards to receiving hate messages and criticism regarding their work?
I think to surround yourself with people who see you and love you. You can't change what other people are sending you. You can't change other people's opinion of you. There's nothing to do to make everyone love you. And I think something that's really important when we spend a lot of time like this down looking at our phone is to look up and look at the people who really see you and know you and love you, which I know isn't really what this book is about, but I do I do hope that that's some of our response to this, is to look at where we feel known. I think on a completely different note, I also, the past few days, have been getting a lot of like, why is this happening? Why is this happening to you? Why is this happening to me? Why? And I understand that with a book like this, there's going to be a lot of questions about why, so that we can make an effort to stop. And I hope that I hope that one of the responses to this is to look inward. I think it's really easy to be like, well, they are so different from me. They're the bad guys. Like this us versus them mentality, like those stupid Republicans or those conservatives or those hateful people. When I'd like to ask myself, I try not to say we. I don't like when people do that. Like, well, we need, no, how about me? I need to look at like what's being taught in my kids' schools. What am I teaching my kids about gender and sexuality and racism and homophobia? What am I doing to combat this in my own personal life? How am I contributing to internet culture? Which I also think, which is also something that I hope comes out of this book.
And this is my question, having written this book, has it changed your relationship with social media for you?
I definitely spend less time on it. And also, I like to say I'm no longer taking submissions for erasure poetry. I don't need any more. I don't plan to write anymore. Yeah, I think just less time and also more boundaries.
Okay, there's so many great questions here.
Oh my goodness, this never happens.
This is awesome.
What a wonderful audience. I can't believe anyone is tuning into a virtual event in 2021. So everyone who is here, thank you for coming. I've been doing these for a while and sometimes nobody's here. So look at all these people. I didn't even open this. Thank you. Thank you for coming to this.
So Carolyn Chipley Foster wrote, Kate, your first book is so important to me as a woman and as a mom. I gave it to many of my friends last year. Excited about your new book. What artists and authors have inspired you as a woman, mom, and author?
Oh my goodness. You know what book I just read? Where is it? Has everyone read this book? It's called Night Bitch by Rachel Yoder. She is an incredible writer who just came out with a book. Yeah, I read a lot of poetry. I also read a lot of fiction. When people ask me what books I've read lately, I can't think of a book I've ever read. But poetry is something that I read a lot on a day-to-day basis. I'm reading Elizabeth Strout's new book right now, Oh William, which is really wonderful. I read a lot of Audre Lorde and Maya Angelou and Wanda Coleman are three poets I read a lot of. And yeah, any artist who's taking risks, who is doing something unlike anyone else has done before, those are the people who really inspire me. Amy Bender wrote some really nutty books that I just love. I love to read them over and over again. Lauren Groff, Fates and Furies. I know that's a big book everyone has already talked about to death, but when I read that, it was just, I don't know, it kind of blew my world of literature open a little bit more, and I love when that happens.
And you write prose and poetry. Do you find that the process is different for you when you're sitting down? I mean, this was a very project-oriented book. I'm not sure if What Kind of Woman was similarly approached for you. How did you approach the collection?
Yeah, I Hope This Finds You Well was very different because I was looking at something and trying to make something out of it, which is so different than just starting from scratch. Writing What Kind of Woman it was difficult, but it was like, I don't know, I'd worked for a novel for 4 years and it was very taxing and unpublished. And then when I started cheating on it with poetry, it felt like taking this big, deep breath of fresh air. Writing this book was like taking a big breath of fresh air and then like smelling a porta potty. It was like, this is fine, but also this kind of stinks sometimes, just because of the original messages. But yeah, it definitely was different. Both took, just like all writing, sitting down and doing it and not complaining about it anymore, not walking around the kitchen in circles anymore.
Nice. So Colby Sheffer asked, "Hi, Kate. Thanks for your work. I think about poetry and writing and money a lot. Did you find the success of your first book gave you the room to explore this one? You were on the New York Times bestseller list. You were number 1. Is that right?"
Yeah, for 1 week. Yes, that was
That's
really
amazing.
exciting.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Money is something we don't talk about in the lit world very often. I think because I was on that bestseller list for 1 week, people think that I'm just sitting on a pile of gold. What I made from What Kind of Woman just covered my childcare for 1 year. So I think it's important to talk about, privilege and also side hustles and the things we have to do to be able to write. What Kind of Woman was the first time I was ever paid to write, which was very exciting and allowed me a lot of freedom and to give up a lot of those side hustles, like editing people's novels. I was going to say really bad novels, but that's unkind. I did a lot of things like that. And I did have some freedom, which I'm very appreciative of, for sure. Yeah.
Nice. Let's see. Okay, there's so many. So how about the title? Where did the title come from for each collection?
My editor.
And that was from Deborah Viana.
Hi, Deborah. My wonderful editor, Mary, pulled What Kind of Woman from a piece in there called Some Nights. And I Hope This Finds You Well. She said, "Does that sound good?" And I said, "Yeah, there's the story to that."
Nice. So I think I can connect these two. Shika Lamba wrote, "The best thing about the pandemic has been a lot of these events going online. Otherwise, for those of us who live outside the US, there'd be no way to attend any readings or author events. Have you managed?" So she's managed to catch some of her favorites, including you, which is very lovely.
Shika. Yeah, that is lovely. That is a great pro to these. And I hope that we keep doing these in book tours, maybe just one, but I think that they make things so accessible. And I do really appreciate that.
It's really, I feel like it's changed everything to be able to have access to writers all over the country, see the readings, listen to talks. So following that, Mary Marks writes, "I think the world of you. I know so many of your author events have been virtual like ours tonight, but was there anything that surprised you or struck you about your recent in-person readings and events?"
That was the first time I was in person. What Kind of Woman came out last November, which was peak pandemic. I thought that everyone would politely clap when I came out, and instead they were really loud. So that was really fun. I was like, oh, this is that feeling people talk about. I felt so loved. It was really, really wonderful. Everyone was wearing a mask though. So it was like, when I was doing my book reading and like looking out, I could only see their eyes. And I was like, are they happy? Are they smiling? I don't know. So they were still masked and vaccinated, but to have that live feedback from the audience was unlike anything I've ever experienced before. And so I feel so lucky to be able to have done that. And I leave tomorrow morning at 4:30 in the morning to fly to Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I will be reading tomorrow night and talking. So I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, wow. Nice. In person.
Yeah.
Someone who didn't share a name said, I can't thank you enough for your fearless and unapologetic work and Instagram presence. You're an inspiration. What has surprised you most about the publishing industry? And more importantly, how best can we support you in your writing other than buying everything or buying everyone we know copies of your books?
I think just continually sharing books that you love, not books that you don't love, but books that you love from all women. I think it's just, I love that. I have a whole book account dedicated to that. That helps me because when we're sharing all these women's stories and uplifting them, that helps everyone. Thank you for those kind words. I forget the first part of that question though. What was it?
About what has surprised you about the publishing
industry?
industry?
The publishing industry. How do I answer that? There's so many surprising things. Like one, you head into it completely blind and no one holds your hand, which is fine. That's part of being an adult. Courtney Malm wrote a really wonderful book called Before and After the Book Deal. If there's anyone listening or watching who wants to kind of have an inside scoop, that came out right around when I was writing What Kind of Woman, which was incredibly helpful because I knew nothing. There's so much language that was being used that I had no idea what anyone was talking about. And so that really helped decode some things and break down some things that I was really confused about. I think so. To answer your question, I think number one, I was shocked by how confused I would be all the time and how dumb I felt about the process. Yeah, so that has been really surprising. It's been fun to do it the second time because I finally know what everyone's talking about and can ask the right questions and advocate for myself in a way that I didn't feel like I could before.
That's a great book. It's Courtney Malm's Before and After the Book Deal.
It's a great book, yeah.
So I listened to your podcast in response to with writer Mother Monster, and you were talking about your kids and writing as a mother. You mentioned Panera. So I'm wondering, kind of think we all hide away wherever we can, especially during the pandemic.
Yeah.
I'm wondering how your relationship, or you dedicate this to your daughter. There are things about your family vaguely in the book. I'm wondering if you talk to them about it or if they've read some of the poems.
My kids?
Mm-hmm.
No, my kids read Dogman. And what's that other guy? Jeff Kinney. What does he write? I see his name. Oh, Diary of a Wimpy Kid and Junie B. Jones. That's what my kids are reading. Shel Silverstein. That's the poetry they read. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, they don't read my books. I don't mind if they do. They've paged through them. But no, they don't. I know that's probably disappointing. People ask me that and no, they don't. They care, but not really.
They're kids.
Classic. They're kids.
Someone said, a silly question. What are your favorite writing snacks?
No, that's not a silly question. I'm from Pennsylvania, so I eat a lot of pretzels and cheese. It's just like, that's what people eat here. I don't know. They eat pretzels and cheese and apples, and we eat a lot of those Pennsylvania Dutch foods. Yeah. Yesterday in the conversation I was having, we were talking about shoe fly pie. Have you ever had that?
I have had
it.
Are you so good.
East Coast enough to know what that is? Okay.
I'm from New Jersey, but I have had it.
Okay. I grew up surrounded by Mennonites, so I also eat Mennonite snacks, which includes shoe fly pie.
Nice. So someone without a name said, Kate, can you speak about how writing these two books has informed how you see yourself as a mom and wife? I feel I'm finally finding myself underneath these roles, and your work has definitely been a catalyst in this for me. I hope this came across right. Your poems and Instagram remind me I'm my own person on top of being these other things to other people.
Thank you. That is such a great question. Yeah, I had an unplanned pregnancy with my fourth, and I was very depressed that entire pregnancy. And even after he was born, it was very difficult for a while. And I felt like I had to claw my way out of that hole and into someone new. And that's kind of where What Kind of Woman came from. And yeah, sometimes you have to go through something really difficult like that to realize, oh, wait, this is who I want to be. This is what I want to do. I started taking writing so much more seriously. Not that I wasn't taking it seriously before, but dedicating a lot more time, working more so that I could write more, finding more childcare. Childcare is freedom. Childcare is life. And for mothers, it's a huge topic right now, especially postpartum childcare and leave for mothers. And the pandemic has certainly brought to light how much of a crisis it is in America. And yeah, I hope that answers your question. I feel like there are a lot of women that reach out to me and are like, how can I do this? I'm a mother. And I feel that so deeply. I feel it to my core. It has been so difficult for so much of the time. I've been a mom for 10 and a half years. And I feel like for 9 of those years, I was constantly fighting for my own space and my own self and my own body and my own mind. And I continue to do that. But childcare is the number one way for me.
Yeah, it's just vital.
Yeah.
Mary Lombard wrote, at a recent retreat with Mari Andrew, she sang your praises and also expressed some disillusionment.
Thank you, Mari.
Some disillusionment with social media and Instagram. Given that you've stepped back from social media after the onslaught from I Hope This Finds You Well, what platforms and mediums or media are you focusing your energy on as you're moving forward?
Like internet platforms. There was like a week a few months ago where I was on TikTok for like 24 hours a day. I like started to get on it and I was on it for so long. Now I'm back off. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want any more platforms. I don't want any more. I'm so happy to connect with people on social media, Twitter every once in a while, and Instagram. There's been so much good that's come out of it. Like I said, I've had so many great conversations. It's a great way to share work. It's a great way to give a preview of the book so people know, oh, I like poetry. I never thought I liked poetry. Here's poetry that I like. There's an incredible account on Instagram called Poetry is a Luxury, which is inspired by an essay by Audre Lorde. An incredible account. And they just post poems from spanning decades, poems from the 1800s, all sorts of poems by all sorts of different people. And I know so many people who have found that account and said, oh my goodness, all I studied when I was in 5th grade were some old white dead guys. I thought I was not smart enough for poetry. I thought I didn't understand it. And there are accounts like that are making it so accessible. So many people are discovering that I do like poetry. I am connecting with it. And so there is a lot of good there. Everyone should follow this account. They do an incredible job posting just a plethora of different voices, which I really appreciate.
That sounds great. I haven't found them yet, mostly because I'm not successful at Instagram.
But anyone who's on there should check them out.
Look for it. So Poetry is a Luxury on Instagram. So I think that follows nicely into Laura Kasai's question. I have 6 nieces and 4 sisters. I bought your first book for all of them. We read the poems together. We laughed and cried at equal parts. Now they want to read more poetry. Do you see your poetry as an embrace of both traditional women's poetry and spoken word? Oh, and then she wrote Mary Hannah. Maybe they're together watching.
I mean, that I've never heard such kinder words. I mean, I love that. Yeah, I hope so. I hope that someday someone looks at me like they look at Sharon Olds or Mary or so many of the great female poets, Margaret Atwood. I don't quite see I don't really look at myself like that, but that's a very nice thing to say. Thank you.
Nice. So we talked a little bit about the publishing world and how you put your poems together, being a mother, balancing all these things. You said that after What Kind of Woman, you were able to get rid of some of the side hustles that you were doing. So what does your day look like now? Like, how do you live your life as a writer, or month or week, however you group together time to be able to write?
Sure. Yeah, I write 4 full days a week. I have my kids on Fridays and I write Monday through Thursday. Some of that time is admin time to keep the house running, my life running. And some of that is PR. I think what people forget is that whenever you're promoting a book, I wrote this a year ago and I'm trying to write for the next deadline. So I have to kind of divide it up into, interviews and promoting a book, and also getting back into the headspace of writing are 2 totally different things. Something I like to do when I start writing is to read for about 15 minutes to get my head back in the clouds. And so that's what I do when I'm in the writing zone. But yeah, I'm so lucky to do 4 days a week. I've just slowly increased it every year because that's what I want to be doing.
Nice. Can you talk about a new project?
Yeah. So my 3rd book comes out fall 2022. And I would love to know, I'd love to, my future self could quick send me a text to say, you did do it. You had time and it's finished. I hope. Yeah. So it's untitled, unfinished, but should be out fall 2022.
Nice. And, we've been talking so much about What Kind of Woman. Would you like to read a couple of poems from there?
Oh, sure. Let me just grab it. Oh. Sure. This is called Why You Shouldn't Marry Me. I just turned to a random page, but if anyone has any suggestions, I'm happy to do that. Why You Shouldn't Marry Me. I was born in another state, like it is something special to have more than one city. When someone says something strange about a party, I assume it's a surprise party just for me. In another life, I was a dancer, black eyes, sharp teeth, the kind of mouth to make your mother scream. I can be beautiful if I want to. I can take your rabbit ears and disappear them with my tongue. If you listen, I will tell you all the ways I have betrayed you. Line them up, secure the edges, turn them into stars. This is my favorite piece. It's also the shortest. It's called Crescendo. The moment in the argument when the only sound between us is the buzz of locusts, cars from a passing street, God licking her fingertips, wondering how this is going to go.
We do have a request from Megan Compton to hear Robin Hood.
Absolutely. It's like, what page is that on? Could you tell me the page? I'm just kidding. I'll find it. Here it is. Robin Hood. Imagine if we took back our diets, our grand illusions, the time spent thinking about the curve of our form. Imagine if we took back every time we called attention to one or the other, her body, our body, the bad shape of things. Imagine the minutes that would stretch into hours, day after day stolen back like a thief. Imagine the power of loose arms and assurance, the years welcomed home in a soft cotton dress.
Well, Flannery Goldberg requests Things My Girlfriends Teach Me, which I see is on page 19.
Oh, well, that was very helpful. Things my girlfriends teach me. When in doubt, try it on. Keep it simple. Don't waste time worrying if they will see you from behind. No one on this entire earth cares more about your life than you. Eat a breakfast, find a God, make a casserole to freeze. If you're walking on a deserted road, send me your location. Remember, you don't need a straw. Drink more water, fold your sweaters. This is the time to buy a hat. When life throws you a bag of sorrow, hold out your hands. Oh, sorry. Little by little, mountains are climbed. I never read that one out loud, so you got me. My, yeah, the last line is tough for me, but I got it out.
Excellent. Chica Lamba asked for Fat Girl, please. Fat Girl.
Sure. I love reading that one. Let me find it. I think it's in the first part.
I think it's on page 17.
How am I so bad at finding these? Okay. I haven't read from this book for a while. This is fun. This is called Fat Girl. Hard to describe. I don't know how to say. Great personality. Real pretty face, but the heavier type of low self-esteem. And I don't know if she's thought of programmed to cut carbs. Friend had a sister who lost all the weight, but it's hard for some people. I want her to be healthy. I can't imagine. Biggest she's been in long time since I've seen her. I know it's a battle. I know how she struggles to let herself go.
That really reflects nicely with the erasure poems.
Yeah. Thank you.
Dillian Schweitzer asked for Moon Song.
How long will it take me to find these things? I don't know. Here it is. Moon Song. You are not an evergreen unchanged by the pitiless snow. You are not a photo, a brand, a character written for sex or house or show. You do not have to choose one or the other, a dream or a dreamer, the bird or the birder. You may be a woman of commotion and quiet, magic and brain. You can be a mother and a poet, a wife and a lover. You can dance on the graves you dug on Tuesday, pulling out the bones of yourself you began to miss. You can be the sun and the moon, the dance of victory song.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite poem from the book?
Yes, Crescendo, which I read just because I love to think about that moment in a marital fight where there's a pause and you don't know where it's going to go. I pulled that poem. What's it called when you write a poem? It's called an ABC poem, but there's a longer name for it. Oh, it's a.
Yeah, I don't know that I can pronounce it. The abecedary.
Yeah, I never want to say it. I wrote one for What Kind of Woman That Got Cut, and I pulled that from there. And I love when poems find their way to you that way, when you're writing something completely different and can pull a few lines from it. That's where that came from.
That's awesome. So in my classes, we're always talking about failing better and practicing and just writing things that don't end up in the book. You talked about reading a little bit before, maybe 15 minutes before you start your writing process. Are you the kind of writer who focuses on writing prompts, and do you give yourself prompts, or do you already have something in mind?
I don't know. I should take your class. Yeah, I think sometimes we as writers are just like hoping that we can write when the mood strikes us, which is actually a horrible approach. I email myself or I write things down throughout the day, most days. And those are where those writing prompts come from. And then when I'm actually working and sitting down to write, I look through those. And then that's when the more, logistical things happen.
Following that, Ginny Mueller wrote, sometimes I have to put your books down for a minute because the poem really hits me deep in a good way and I have to let it sit in. Do you ever feel that way while you're writing them?
No, but when I just read that one, it did hit me. I never cry when I read my poems except for that one. You really got me, because I always say I'm not going to read that one. No, not really. I mean, every once in a while, I'll kind of sit back and think, oh, wow, this is what I've been trying to say for 6 months in this poem. And then it finally comes. And so that's more what I feel, is this feeling of relief. I think so often when we're writing, we're just circling the drain, not saying what we actually want to say. And so I think with poetry, especially when you can finally get there, it does feel really great.
Mm. Laurent Bosselar used to say during workshop that every writer is really obsessed with something. I think the drain's a good image. Should we just keep writing the same thing from different angles until finally we're like, here's something we can share.
Right.
Yeah. Here are two lovely comments. Jean Greaves writes, a year ago, my daughter, age 20, loaned me your book and insisted I read it. I'm so glad I did. It ranks among my favorite books of 2020. I pre-ordered this one for her and she pre-ordered it for me. We now each have our own copy. Thank you for writing poems we can both relate to.
Oh, Jean, I love that so much. You're so lucky. You are so lucky to have each other. That's really wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
It's so beautiful. And Jillian Schweitzer writes, no question. I just want to say I love your work and it's meant so much to me.
Thank you.
And then we have a more kind of the poetics of the writing. Someone writes, do you like the idea of using new forms of line from text messages, emojis, apps, etc. in poetry? Authors have been doing this more and more in prose.
Sure. I like anything that takes a risk and pushes back at a very stuffy literary world that loves to keep tradition and gatekeep people and gatekeep kinds of writing and exploration. I'm here for anything. I'm here for anything that connects with readers and tries to look at language in a new form. Absolutely.
Nice. So thinking back to the question about self-care and how you're approaching your writing, an anonymous person wrote, it feels like haters and trolls, beyond voicing concern or perspective, really try to injure their people that they're writing to. Do you have any tips to avoid the temptation to lash back?
I think having a staunch boundary and response, I delete and block right away. Any of the pieces that I made poetry out of, I've already deleted and blocked them. I take a screenshot. I never look again. I think it's a very fruitless endeavor to write back. And a great example of this, if you go onto www.facebook.com, I think it's called Meta now. I forget what Mark's done, but and go to your local news posts and then look at the comments under a local news post. That will give you a great visual of why you should never write back and why it's so fruitless. And instead, try to make connections with friends and family in your real life who you might disagree with. And I also should do this. I don't want to tell anyone to do that, but myself definitely included. That to me is a much better action step than typing and having a faceless conversation where so much of the communication is lost.
Shika Lamba asked, do you have advice for budding poets?
Absolutely. Read as much as you can. Read and read and read and read all sorts of books that you never would have normally read, all sorts of genres that you would have never normally read. Follow poetry as a luxury. Check out the author's books in the library or buy them if you can, and just read. That to me is the number one way to get the language, to get the pacing. Just the best thing you can do is to read as much as you can.
I'll add, really listening to the writers like Kate, reading the work to hear how they sound too, and hearing that voice and rhythm, which sometimes is harder for you to come up with it on your own in the beginning when you're first reading poetry.
Yeah. And when you get those books from the library, to read those poems out loud, because even when you read them yourself, it surprises me sometimes how different it is read out loud. Might feel silly at first, but it actually is very helpful.
Yeah. Here's a good question about publishing. You talked a little bit about what you learned in the Courtney Mound book. Pamela Ross asks, if you post the poetry on Instagram, do you lose your rights to its publication?
No. You own everything you write. So no, you can do whatever you want. Yeah, it's not something that I think a lot of people are confused by that in general, and like to label certain kinds of people Instagram poets, which is fine for anyone to call me that. I've been called so much worse, especially in like third grade. Yeah, I give a preview of my work on Instagram, which I like to call good marketing.
Nice. And so we just have a couple of minutes left. I was wondering if you wanted to read another poem or two from I Hope This Finds You Well.
Oh, sure. This has been this has been such a great event online. Sometimes there's crickets, and these have been such thoughtful questions, which I really appreciate. I also haven't read this much in an event, and I'm happy to do that. Does anyone have anyone that you would want me to read? Some of them are so long, like this Brett Kavanaugh. That's not one that I would love to read.
What
Okay.
about on page 46 regarding Smart Women by Joseph Epstein for the Wall Street Journal? Just because it was different.
Oh, brother.
from
Yes, I'd
here.
love to read that one. Madam First Lady, Mrs. Biden, Jill, Kiddo, a bit of advice on what may seem like a small, but I think is not an unimportant matter. Any chance you might drop the doctor before your name? Dr. Jill Biden sounds and feels fraudulent. Not to say a touch comic. Your degree is, I believe, an EDD, a Doctor of Education, earned at the University of Delaware through a dissertation with the unpromising title, Student Retention at the Community College Level, Meeting Students' Needs. A wise man once said that no one should call himself doctor unless he has delivered a child. Think about it, Dr. Jill, and forthwith drop the doc. A touch comic, the dissertation with the unpromising man. What a joker.
I don't see any other requests, but do you want to pick one last poem? to read?
857. Sure. Separation of body and worth. Thank you so much for your work on acceptance and body neutrality. To love yourself is easier said than done. I've been struggling with EDs for most of my life. Therapy in the 90s consisted mostly of being told to love ourselves without being given the tools to interact with an ever body-focused world. Today, there are so many more resources and therapies that focus on finding the root of our thought patterns. You can't replace therapy with Instagram infographics, but I so appreciate the encouragement to create safe feeds and timelines. I also love the challenge to live without fear and invitation to fail and start over again tomorrow. It is refreshing and I am here for it. To love yourself is to love the world and find a place to live in it.
So great. Thank you.
Thank you both so much on behalf of Politics in Prose and our audience out there. This really has been a lovely evening. Again, we put the link in the chat so you can grab your copy of I Hope This Finds You Well from us. I might not have to remind our audience out there about it. Sounds like they're really well versed. But again, this is an excellent gift for you for the holidays. So please grab this collection, pass it on to a family friend. It sounds like it's touched so many lives. So from Politics in Prose again, thanks to Kate Baer, Chloe Yelena Miller, our audience. Once more, if you don't follow the link, just visit us at politics-prose.com. You can check out our events calendar there as well for everything else coming up for the end of the year and beyond. And from our shelves to yours, we hope everyone out there is staying safe, staying strong, and of course, staying well read. Thank you all so much, and we will see you next time. Good night, Kate.
Thank
Good
you.
night, Chloe.
Bye, Chloe. Thank